HTC has been facing trouble in the mobile business for years now, and I think we're getting to the point where it's better known for its VR headsets than it is for its smartphones. The new HTC U12 Plus was supposed to change that. It is a powerful, handsome smartphone that, on paper at least, has everything it needs to compete with the biggest and the best in the industry. Before we go any further though, just know this. The U12 Plus gets a lot right, but we can't really recommend it over any of the other flagship smartphones you can buy out there right now. Let's start with the good stuff first. We've been testing the translucent blue U12 Plus, and man, this phone is really, really pretty. HTC's chosen finish is striking in an atomic purple Game Boy Color kind of way. And even though companies like Xiaomi are doing translucent phones now too, the U12 Plus's metal and glass design feels gutsy in a subdued sort of way. Just be aware that this is a handful of a phone, and it probably won't work at all for people with really small hands. While it doesn't stretch across the entirety of the phone's face, the U12 Plus's 6-inch 18:9 Super LCD 6 screen is also a pleasure to look at. AMOLED screens still have the edge when it comes to vibrant colors and really deep blacks, but HTC's choice of screen here honestly left us with little to complain about. We just wish it were a little bit more readable under bright sunlight. The U12 Plus sounds pretty good too. There's a set of stereo boom sound speakers wedged inside the device, and they're much nicer than the usual hideous sounding drivers you usually find inside smartphones. We don't know that you should listen to an entire album on this thing, but you could and not feel like you've completely wasted your time. There's unfortunately no headphone jack here, but HTC almost makes up for it with its included Usonic earbuds. The buds themselves form a nice tight seal when inserted into the ears, and the phone whips up a specialized audio profile to tune music specifically for your ear's nuances. Even better, the buds draw power through that USB-C connection to power their active noise cancellation, which definitely helped a few recent flights feel more bearable than usual. And with a Snapdragon 845 chipset plus 6GB of RAM inside, the U12 Plus is undeniably fast. We've been multitasking on this thing, we've been playing PUBG Mobile, hardly anything we've thrown at this device has been able to give it pause. The lone exception seems to be HTC's own Sense interface, which sits on top of Android 8.0 Oreo and has come to feel a little overwrought compared to some of the lighter approaches we've seen HTC's competitors take. While a little software optimization would have gone a long way, there's still little question that the U12 has more than enough power for just about anyone's daily routine. While Google and Samsung often get props for making the best smartphone cameras, we would caution you to not sleep on HTC. The photos this thing can churn out can be fantastic sometimes. We're working with a dual camera that melds a 12 megapixel primary sensor with a 16 megapixel telephoto sensor, and you can use them in tandem to fill portrait backgrounds with bokeh or zoom up to 2 times with no loss in image quality. These features work well enough, but they're almost a distraction from how good that standard 12 megapixel camera is. Our test shots came through with loads of detail and very accurate color saturation, although you will notice the auto HDR mode makes the world in front of the camera look more lively than in reality. Using the camera in low light was also super impressive, if only for the minimal noise that showed up in our shots. Throw in the ability to shoot 4K video at 60 frames per second with 3D audio recorded by the phone's 4 microphones, and we're left with what feels like one of the most versatile smartphone shooting options around. So yeah, as we've said, the U12 Plus does well on many fronts. It also falls short in some notable ways, and we think one of them is a deal breaker. As good as the U12 Plus's rear dual camera is, its front-facing dual camera leaves a lot to be desired. The 2 8-megapixel sensors wedged in above the screen give you proper portrait selfies, but it's almost too aggressive at smoothing out the foreground. The end result are softer photos than we'd like, to the point where the camera also seems to be smoothing out the faces in the frame. We've seen better results from phones like the Pixel 2 that do all that background blurring in software without the benefit of a second camera. Meanwhile, HTC's Sense Assistant lives alongside both Google Assistant and Alexa on the U12 Plus, and it's meant to thoughtfully offer reminders and suggestions throughout the day. You know, stuff like you should bring an umbrella when there's rain in the forecast, or restaurant recommendations as you wander between neighborhoods. We've been testing the U12 Plus for more than a week now, and we have received precisely 0 helpful notifications. Thanks, I guess, HTC. Battery life also is pretty unremarkable. We were hoping to see HTC squeeze a big battery into this kind of unwieldy body, but nope. There's just enough juice in here to last about 1 full day of use, although that figure tends to drop with more consistent use. And then there's EdgeSense 2. It's neat in theory, but it's ultimately one of the most divisive, inconsistent things about the U12 Plus. You see, the phone sides are pressure sensitive, so they basically turn the phone's body into a button. Give the phone a squeeze and it'll perform an action. Hold that squeeze and it performs a different action. It might sound a little strange, but being able to squeeze the phone to launch Alexa or Google Assistant or even the camera is really handy. No wonder Google ran with the same idea in its most recent Pixel phones. You can also create your own app shortcuts by recording your taps on the screen, or double tap the sides of the phone to launch a one-handed mode so you can reach icons from across the screen. Here's our big problem though. The phone itself doesn't have real volume or power buttons, just little nubs that the phone's pressure sensing system can differentiate. The problem is, the amount of pressure needed to actually press one of these buttons can feel wildly inconsistent. Sometimes a normal tap does the trick. Other times we've had to press really, really hard to get any kind of reaction. To be fair, the so-called power button didn't have nearly as many issues as the volume keys, which we struggled with almost daily. We could maybe live with Lackluster Selfies and an AI assistant that doesn't really assist very much, but man, when you can't count on a phone's buttons to do what they're supposed to do on a daily basis, there is something really wrong here. Just to be safe, we asked HTC for another unit to test, and it worked only a little bit better than our originals. All told, we've collectively tried out 4 different U12 Pluses, and the fact that the buttons still perform differently despite having the same supposedly retail-ready software is frankly quite concerning. For what it's worth, HTC is aware of the issue, and the company says it's going to try and improve performance with a post-launch update. More fine-tuning may fix the issue eventually, but as it stands, these pressure-sensitive buttons kind of ruin an otherwise great smartphone experience, and that's honestly a shame because this phone gets so much right otherwise. Hopefully that gets cleared up soon, because in the meantime, we simply can't recommend a phone that misses the mark on basic functionality.